What's going on, guys? Welcome to day 19. I hope your week is going well and that you have been blessed. Today, we are going to touch on the importance of remembering what God has said to you and especially what God has done for you in the past. That is, don't forget the good things that God has done for you. Don't forget all the blessings that He has given you and provided for you. So, if there is a prominent blessing that God has given you or something that He has done, a miracle, anything at all, drop it in the comments down below. I would love to hear what God has done in your life. I love hearing testimonies. But today we are going to actually touch on two different verses in Exodus. Now, all through Scripture, there is a story of the Israelites, God's people, the nation of Israel, even before it was recognized as a nation. The people not following God's law, not following His commands, not loving the Lord, falling away from Him, and then Him correcting them, and then them coming back, right? Well, this is in Exodus. We are going to pick up where they are in Egypt. So if you don't know, long short of it is, Israel is enslaved in Egypt. God works it out where He raises up Joseph to take care of them and break them out. But we are picking this up in Exodus chapter 5, starting at verse 6. Their time in Egypt was very harsh and very brutal. I am going to read this whole chapter, 23 verses, because it really speaks to how harsh they had it in Egypt. The Pharaoh was extremely hard on the Israelites. The Egyptians overall detested, absolutely hated the Hebrew people, hated the Israelites. In fact, they made them stay in a separate land, Goshen, which we're not getting into today, but that is also documented well in Exodus. So picking this up in verse 6, it is talking about making bricks without straw. So as we will see, they had to build bricks, bake bricks out in the sun, and the straw was incorporated into that, much like we have rebar today with steel. Back in the day, they realized that when they made bricks from clay and from mud, if they incorporated straw and other fibers into it, it made it much stronger and it would bind it together. So that is what this is speaking to. But Pharaoh is going to require them to build bricks, to continue making bricks at the same rate without being provided straw, because up to this point, the Egyptians were providing straw for them to use in the bricks. Verse 6, that same day, Pharaoh sent this order to the Egyptian slave drivers and the Israelite foremen. Do not supply any more straw for making bricks. Make the people get it themselves, but still require them to make the same number of bricks as before. Don't reduce the quota. They are lazy. That's why they are crying out, let us go and offer sacrifices to our God. Load them down with more work. Make them sweat. That will teach them to listen to lies. So the slave drivers and foremen went out and told the people, this is what Pharaoh says. I will not provide any more straw for you. Go and get it yourselves. Find it wherever you can, but you must produce just as many bricks as before. So the people scattered throughout the land of Egypt in search of stubble to use as straw. Meanwhile, the Egyptian slave drivers continued to push hard. Meet your daily quota of bricks, just as you did when we provided you with the straw, they demanded. Then they whipped the Israelite foremen they had put in charge of the work crews. Why haven't you met your quotas either yesterday or today? They demanded. So the Israelite foreman went to Pharaoh and pleaded with him. Please don't treat your servants like this, they begged. We are given no straw, but the slave drivers still demand make bricks. We are being beaten, but it isn't our fault. Your own people are to blame. But Pharaoh shouted, you are just lazy. Lazy. That is why you're saying, let us go and offer sacrifices to the Lord. Now get back to work. No straw will be given to you, but you must still produce the full quota of bricks. The Israelite foremen could see they were in serious trouble when they were told, you must not reduce the number of bricks you make each day. So as we could see, they are getting basically the crap beat out of them, and they have to keep up their quota even though they are being held back from having the materials that they should be provided, right? So their life in Egypt is basically a living hell. It's rough. It's not something that, it's not even like they're in prison. It's far worse than that. They are being forced to do things that are basically impossible to do. They can't produce the quota, and because they can't produce the quota, they're getting beaten for it. So it is absolutely miserable in Egypt. We are skipping ahead to Exodus chapter 16. This is after God sends the plagues on Pharaoh, and they escape Egypt. At this point, they are out in the wilderness. They were so quick to forget everything God had done for them in Egypt, how he protected them, provided for them, led them out of slavery, and now we pick up with them where they're being led through the wilderness by Moses and Aaron. But yet they are complaining yet again. So we see this in Exodus chapter 16, picking it up in verse 2. There too, the whole community of Israel complained about Moses and Aaron. If only the Lord had killed us back in Egypt, they moaned. There we sat around pots filled with meat and ate all the bread we wanted. But now you have brought us into this wilderness to starve us all to death. Then the Lord said to Moses, Look, I am going to rain down food from heaven for you. Each day the people can go out and pick up as much food as they need for that day. I will test them in this to see whether or not they will follow my instructions. On the sixth day, they will gather food, and when they prepare it, there will be twice as much as usual. Because obviously they're not supposed to work on the seventh. The Lord is honoring the Sabbath day. So again, they're going to work 6 days in collecting food, and they'll have enough for each day. But every time God provides food for them, he provides it, he sets it up so that they don't have to collect food on the Sabbath day. Verse 6, So Moses and Aaron said to all the people of Israel, By evening you will realize it was the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt. In the morning you will see the glory of the Lord, because he has heard your complaints, which are against him, not against us. What have we done that you should complain about us? Then Moses added, The Lord will give you meat to eat in the evening and bread to satisfy you in the morning. For he has heard all your complaints against him. What have we done? Yes, your complaints are against the Lord, not against us. Now, that gets into another aspect of authority, where if you are rebelling against authority, right, Moses and Aaron were given that position by God. So in the people rebelling against them, complaining against them, it's actually not complaining against Moses and Aaron. God is the one who appointed them to be in that leadership position. So ultimately, these complaints are against God. That's not today's message, but I just wanted to point that out. A short few chapters later, that was Exodus 16. As I said, in Exodus 5, they're talking about how hard it is to make bricks. They can't keep up. They don't have enough straw. It's unfair. And then here we are, right? And they're looking back. Oh, but we had plates full of meat and plates full of bread to eat in Egypt. God led us out here to die. Moses and Aaron are trying to get us killed out here. Isn't that funny? I love it because people are the same today. That's people. They forget the good things that God has done. They forget the good things that other people have done, and they remember the negative. And we see the same thing happen whenever people talk about past moves of God, even in the 1800s, the 1900s, the 1940s, 50s, 60s, the 1980s. We have people talk about past revivals. Oh, I remember it was such a strong move of God. Everybody was laid out on the floor and we just worshiped for hours. Yeah, but when that was happening, you didn't even recognize that it was a revival. You know, I think people just have this way of looking back in history. I guess you could call it nostalgia, where you remember the past different from how it actually happened, how it actually took place. Because here's a documented case, right? You go back to Exodus, early in Exodus 5, 4, 6, whatever, the whole time they're in Egypt, they're talking about how hard it is and how rough it is and how they can't do what they're asked to do. But then you bring them out of that, break them out of slavery. God is leading them to the promised land. And in the midst of that, they're complaining, oh, we should have died in Egypt. We would have been better in Egypt. We had everything in Egypt. Did you? Did you really? Because I read Exodus 5 and you didn't have anything. You had it harsh and you were crying out that you were being driven too hard. So that's my message for today. Don't ever forget what God has done for you. And also don't forget what other people have done for you. I like to thank people and remind people of times that they have done things for me, times that they have blessed me, and just remind them of that. Like, hey, I remember when you did that. Thank you for that. People appreciate that. People love being reminded of an impact that they had on your life, whether it was big or small, whether it was in a job or a career or in church or family, friend, anytime they helped you out or you helped them out. You know, that is what really keeps people going. That is something that just uplifts people. And the word of God says that he who refreshes others himself will be refreshed. So don't forget what God has done for you. Don't forget what others have done for you. Always be thankful, always be grateful, always realize that it could be worse, and call those things that are not as though they are. Because had the Israelites been thanking God and praising him, God, thank you for bringing us out of Egypt. Thank you for bringing us to the promised land, even though they're not there yet. Thank you for giving us that promise. Thank you for leading us to a better place. That would have turned the whole thing around. That would have changed everything. But instead, they chose to focus on complaining. Complaining is another message for another day, but as we will see, God hates complaining. He absolutely hates complainers, and complaining will actually hold you back rather than bless you and propel you forward in the things God has called you to do and in the things God has set out for your life. I hope this video blessed you. I hope it encouraged you. I hope it educated you and gave you some information. I'd love to hear your testimony of times that God was good in your life. With that being said, I love you guys. Can't wait to see you. Catch you in the next one.